Year to year, the NBA can change dramatically, with players constantly on the move and teams sporting new rosters pretty much every year. One year you can be on top competing with the best in the league, and the next year you could find yourself in the lottery if you're not careful. NBA off-seasons are more important than ever for teams to make good moves to improve the team through both the draft and free agency, because one mistake could set you back a ton from accomplishing your goals. For today's video, we're going to be discussing a team in the Portland Trail Blazers that were coming off one of the best seasons in their franchise's recent history, but this year have found themselves in the basement of the standings. We're going to be going over what changed from last year to this year, some of the major mistakes they made this summer, and whether or not they can turn things around. Before we get started though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now, with that being said, let's begin. In last year's playoffs, Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, and the rest of the Trailblazers team went on a glorious run to the Western Conference Finals before ultimately getting eliminated by the Warriors. But along the way, they made some legendary moments, with the biggest one obviously being Lillard's series-winning fadeaway three from deep to eliminate the Thunder in the first round. They may not have won the championship, but morale going into the offseason was definitely flying high. Having been one series away from the finals, the next step for the team and their number one priority this offseason should have been to bolster the roster in order to take the next step. They have two franchise cornerstone elite shot creating guards coming off of arguably their best playoff performances of their careers, and the momentum is in their favor, so surrounding those guys with role players that fit the system and elevate the team should have been the goal. Either that, or they should have at least kept the team around and re-signed some of their impending free agents. Instead, they didn't do either of these things this offseason, which is where their troubles all began, because they chose to make some changes and not for the better. Free agency this summer followed the happenings of all of the big names available very closely, but when it came to the role players, a few moves flew under the radar. Everyone knows about how Jimmy Butler chose to leave the 76ers to go to the Miami Heat, and how those two teams had to do a sign and trade in order to make that happen. But what many people glossed over was the fact that that move was actually a 4-team trade involving the Trailblazers and Clippers as well. Jimmy obviously went to the Heat, and the Heat sent back Josh Richardson in the trade to the Sixers, but the Heat also acquired Myers Leonard from the Blazers, the Clippers acquired Mo Harkless from the Blazers, and the Blazers came out of the deal only with center Hassan Whiteside from the Heat. On paper, you would think that adding a player like Whiteside makes sense because the team's current starting center, Yusuf Nurkic, is going to miss most of the season, plus Whiteside's per-game averages aren't bad at all, as he grabs a ton of rebounds and blocks a few shots per game as well. But Whiteside has had his issues over the years in Miami that go beyond the box score, especially considering how much money he's getting paid. I'll get more into this later, but out of the 4 teams in the trade, I think it's pretty safe to say that they came out with the short end of the stick. After that trade, they also had important role players such as Rodney Hood, Al-Farouq Aminu, Seth Curry, Enes Kanter, and rising young guy Jake Layman all entering free agency. Rodney Hood stepped his game up big time in the playoffs throughout their conference finals run, so when they re-signed him for 2 more years, it was definitely a positive, but after that, there was little to celebrate. Al-Farouq Aminu signed with the Magic, Seth Curry signed with the Mavericks, Enes Kanter signed with the Celtics, and Jake Layman signed with the Timberwolves. With that much production gone, they needed a ton of help brought in to replace it, and the route they went to do this was, to put it nicely, not enough. The best of the deals they made was trading Evan Turner for Kent Bazemore, but even Bazemore has proven to be streaky at best as a perimeter scorer that struggles with efficiency and has only ever really produced on bad teams, with his best years being on tanking Atlanta teams. They also brought in Anthony Tolliver for depth, but at his best, he's only ever been a bench player that provides some good floor spacing, but honestly not much else. Mario Hezonja was another free agent that they brought in an attempt to give him one last shot to prove himself, because after being taken as a high lottery pick back in 2015, he has yet to put together a single consistently solid season. Putting all of this change together for the season, they went from a team that relies heavily on Lillard and McCollum with strong role players around them, to a team that will have to rely even more heavily on Lillard and McCollum with some questionable role players around them. Now, getting into analyzing how their season has gone so far, it's been going exactly how you would assume it's gone based on the lengthy explanation I just gave. The team has been struggling mightily, with a record of 5-12 at this point in the season, and they have the second worst record in the West and fourth worst record in the whole NBA. This is a team that most people assumed were a lock for the playoffs, mind you, so I don't think it's unfair to say that the way they've started this season has been nothing short of a disaster. Shifting our attention away from the basics of the issues, we're now going to be looking deeper into the heart of the team's problems this year. As I said before, even more pressure was going to be on Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, both individually and working together. When these two share the court, the Blazers actually outscore the other team by 5.4 points per 100 possessions. But once one or both of them goes to the bench, everything starts to crumble. For example, with Lillard on the court and McCollum off the court, the Blazers get outscored by a miserable 16 points per 100 possessions, and when McCollum is on the court without Lillard, the Blazers get outscored by an almost equally as poor 10 points per. Based on these numbers, it's quite clearly a testament to the players around them, because when either of those guys go to the bench, the rest of the team needs to step up, and they simply haven't been doing so. The offense staggers, the defense gets lit up, and all in all, bad things happen. The team clearly needed something new to ignite them, so they decided to bring in none other than Carmelo Anthony, who is determined to prove his doubters wrong about still belonging in the league as a capable contributor. But can he actually be a solution for the Blazers' problems? I'm not so sure. Carmelo is an incredibly fascinating topic that could be its own video by itself, but for the sake of fitting it into this specific topic, I'll focus on his fit on the team and what he brings. Melo, especially late in his career, can still be someone that you give the ball to get baskets, but realistically, he needs the ball in his hands to be effective. No matter how hard people try to urge him to mold his game into a system instead of his typical style of isolation, he just hasn't been able to do it, and over time his success in isolation basketball has been waning. His field goal percentage is poor because of his shot selection being made up mostly of long twos, and especially lately, he hasn't made threes at a high enough clip to justify him as a spot-up shooter. He shot 32.8% from three last year with the Rockets before they cut him, and so far this year, he's shooting 31.1%, both numbers being below average. On top of all of this, his defense has never been something worth praise, and as he gets older, that's unlikely to change. Carmelo is someone that probably hasn't been given a fair shake recently, and when it comes to the argument of whether or not he still deserves a spot on a team, my answer is that he definitely does, but the conversation changes when you talk about whether or not he can help the Blazers start winning games, because the answer to that, at least for me, is I don't think so. If Carmelo Anthony is your last gasp effort to salvage your season, you might already be doomed. The one thing that would have been able to stabilize this shaky roster is Jusuf Nurkic, who really broke out last year and had his best season as a pro, but unfortunately he's expected to be out until at least February, and by the time February comes around, it might be too late. His rim protection is far superior to Hassan Whiteside's no matter what the blocks per game say. He's much more versatile on both ends of the floor than any other option the team currently has, and offensively, he gives the team a very much needed third option. Luckily, they still have most of the season ahead of them, so there is still time to right the ship, but based on the issues that have hampered the team so far, it certainly won't be easy. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below how worried about the Blazers you are at this point in time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.